So thanks for understanding about last week. I was definitely not in any shape to teach. I had to cancel my Tuesday class and this class, so I'm a lot better today, and it was just a cold. It wasn't COVID. So a good old-fashioned cold. So we missed our standing practice week, and it's also now forward bending week, and so I'm going to kind of put them together today. And we're going to do a lot of standing work with the chair, including our warm-ups. But we're going to start seated and just getting centered. So move forward on the chair so that you aren't relying on the back of the chair for support, and you're starting to use your own effort to sit up tall. And take some time to just kind of balance over the center points of your sitting bones. Sometimes we have habits where we sit back on the sitting bones or we sit to one side. So try to really kind of balance your weight in the very centers, shoulders above the hips, taking a moment to lift and spread your chest. And then we're going to bring our hands together in front of the heart without the shoulders coming forward. So see if you can kind of maintain the gentle effort of the shoulder blades moving toward the chest. And then close your eyes and look away from your brain. Just begin to notice as much as you can notice here. You might notice things that you sense in your body. You might notice things you sense outside of yourself, in the room, maybe even outside of the house. Sensing how busy the mind is, how many thoughts are kind of circulating around. Just really gathering as much information as you can before you start your practice. So you can really always begin where you are. It's the only way we can really make any progress, is if we have that moment of acceptance. And as you're ready, bowing toward your heart, release your hands, lift your head, gently open your eyes, and welcome. All right, so we're going to start right away, waking up the spine from a standing position. We're going to work with the seat of the chair. So you can find your way up to standing. Just going to angle my camera back a little bit here. And the first thing we're going to do is the flexion and extension of the spine. So you'll put yourself in kind of this tabletop position. Your legs right underneath your hips and your wrists right beneath your shoulders. Make sure your feet are at least hip distance apart. And then just begin on an exhalation. You're going to bend your knees, round your spine, and curl your gaze in like you're looking for your belly button. Empty all your breath. And then inhale, arching your back, looking forward, lengthening from the tailbone out through the top of the head. And continue back to that cat tilt with your exhale. So you're really trying to tap into kind of letting your breath set a pace here for you. Inhaling to arch the back. And just kind of notice your own mobility as you go. Try not to be judgmental about it, but just notice. You might notice parts of the spine or the back that are kind of talking to you or feeling a little more sensation. Notice if there's any kind of increased range of motion as you continue to repeat this cat-cow. And try not to rush, especially with your exhalation. Really kind of linger to the very last drop of the out breath. We'll just do 2 more complete cat-cows here. Last one. And once you've come through that last one, just put yourself back in a neutral spinal position. We're going to now move laterally. So you're going to kind of wag your buttocks back and forth. You're going to roll your hips to the left and just look over to the right. This is going to be our exhale movement. Inhale, roll your hips through the middle space and on over to the right side. Look over to the left. Okay, so transitioning on the inhales and then exhale, you're really kind of pressing that hip out to the side, waiting for the full exhale to complete. Inhaling through the middle. And see if you can kind of visualize your spine here as you go. Don't forget to move the head as well so that you have complete crescent shape of the spine. So we get that one side getting nice and open. The other side gets a little compression, which is really good for the kidney organ, for detoxing, massaging that organ. Some people consider the kidneys our battery packs in the body, and we kind of determine how much energy we can feel. Let's do one more to each side here. Next time you breathe in, just kind of swing the hips back to center. You're going to attempt to place your left hand kind of in the middle of the chair now. So it's kind of right under the breastbone. So we're going to do a twisting action now. Take your right hand to your right hip. And on an exhale, push into your left hand and just kind of turn your chest to the right. And especially around that left armpit area, just see if you can kind of bring that armpit area, the side ribs, kind of out of the shadows into the light. Roll that top shoulder back. One more exhale here. And then inhale, you're going to gently turn to face your chair and change out your hand. So the right hand will now be centered kind of directly under the breastbone. The left hand will come to the hip. On an exhale, pushing deeply into your right hand, starting to turn the torso to the left. And use those exhales. That's when the spine really loves to move, squeezing out the breath. And think about the kind of armpit chest area of the right side ribs. Try to roll it around toward the front body. And then finishing on an exhalation, inhale, gently turn back toward your chair. So we're going to practice a sunbird position. This is a little bit of a balance. So raising the right leg, and you don't have to bring it completely level to the floor, but do your best to raise the leg and make sure to use your stomach muscles. So you're gently corseting the abdominal muscles toward midline and toward the back body. And this supports your back so you don't just hang the dead weight of your leg from the back. So this might be where you are. You might play with a little bit of controlling the right hip that wants to float up. Try to keep it level with the left hip. Sometimes imagining you have a little teacup resting on your lower back here. And maybe extending the left arm. And that piece might not be for everybody. So if you can't lift the left arm, that's okay. But otherwise you will, and you'll just take a few breaths here. This is a pose that brings some heat into the body. It strengthens you, requires balance, it requires strength. Go ahead and take the hand down if you did elevate it, and then slowly lower your foot down. And come down onto the forearms. Bend your knees a little bit. Let your head just kind of dangle. And just take a few passive moments here. So the sunbird position is more challenging. So just giving yourself a little chance to rest and recover. And then as you're ready, you'll come back to your hands. And by the way, if you have issues with your wrists, you have a couple options instead of just flat palms to the chair. You can elevate the heels of the hands with like a blanket if you need to open the wrist a little more. Some people also do fists, but that can be a little bit uncomfortable on the seat of the chair. So there's options for wrists if you have difficulty with deep wrist flexion. Okay, we're going to go to the other side of that sunbird. So raise your left leg. Remember to use your stomach muscles think about your stomach muscles like particle board, and they're moving all kind of in concert toward the center body and toward the back body. Support your back. Try to wind your left toes so they point straight down. Don't let them turn out. And remember, we don't want to be dogs at the fire hydrant. So try not to roll up that left hip. In other words, roll that outer left hip down because we want to level it with the right hip. Maybe the right arm extends. Maybe that piece isn't in the cards today. So just do your best here. And give this pose some deeper breaths. So it's not your resting, seated meditation breathing. It's a higher octane breath, deep, warming breaths. Placing the hand again, and then slowly lower the leg. And come back to that kind of passive, softer knees, resting on the forearms, letting the head hang freely, and just letting your breath do its thing. You might have a faster breath, might be louder, you might be panting. Try to just let the breath find its way back to regulated breath. Good work. So gently back upright. And now we'll come into our chair downward dog. So not all the way upright, you can stay, forward bent, but just walking your legs back. And we're trying to put the torso at an angle now, but the legs will remain upright. So I think is it Karen? Try to get your legs under you. There you go. Yep. So you're trying to match the line of the arms with the torso. Yep. And as we develop our downward dogs, the shoulders, as we start this pose, the shoulders tend to make a peak between the arms and the hips. Eventually, as we develop this pose, the shoulders become more of a valley. So you start to really sink the shoulder blades toward the chest, draw your hips back, work toward a straighter leg, both legs, obviously, and breathe. And let your head just kind of pass through the space of the arms. You don't have to hold your head up in any rigid position with your neck. Just a couple more breaths here. Okay, so start to kind of roll yourself forward until you can bring the legs back toward the chair where you just were. So you're back in that tabletop position. And we're going to kind of put that sunbird together and kind of tie it into a pose called half moon pose. So it's very similar to sunbird, which you just did, except we're going to stack the hips. So you're going to come from this tabletop position and go back to raising your right leg. Okay, now pour some weight into your left hand and see about rolling your right hip back so that it comes above the left hip. And maybe if you're stable enough, you can take your right hand onto your right hip, but that piece might not be ready. So just move at the speed of kind of confidence and stability. Don't rush anything. Safety first is my mantra, especially in yoga. Good, you guys really look great. So see if you can use those stomach muscles to help you rotate to turn back toward the chair. That's important because the stomach muscles protect us from injuries in the lower back. So you're gonna turn back to facing the chair, slowly lower the right leg, and then go back to your kind of soft knees, lower arms, head dangling, restful position. So this is a chair version of Uttanasana, which is a standing forward bend. And again, just waiting for breath to smooth out, become silky and smooth. It might take, well, it'll take as long as it takes. So we don't have to be a synchronized yoga team. If you're not ready to transition to second side, wait until you are. And for anybody who is, we're going to attempt to do the left side of that balancing half moon now. So still make sure the feet are hip distance. One thing that happens when we do poses or we have only one standing leg is the foot of that leg likes to turn out for most of us. So we have to pay kind of particular attention to keeping your right toes in front of your right heel. Go ahead and raise the left leg. Remember to use your stomach muscles. Squeeze them together and pull them toward the back body. Pour some weight to your right hand. Slowly turn your hips and your chest toward that left wall. Maybe you have the stability and control to be able to take the left hand out of the hip. It's not necessary if you don't. And then again, using the support of the stomach muscles, corseting them toward the back body, roll back to pointing your hips evenly at the floor, and then descend your leg, bring it down. Again, resting in Uttanasana, bowing the head. So your knees do not have to be soft here. If you're able to work into a straighter leg, that's ideal. But a lot of times we have to kind of go at the pace of the leg. So a lot of times legs aren't ready to fully extend, and we don't want to force that. Stay for 3 more breaths. So on an inhale, just start to kind of lift your eyes up, lift your head up, bring your hands back onto the chair. And we'll come into our Parsvottanasana pose. So this is the 1 foot steps forward, 1 foot steps back. So we're going to start with the right foot under the chair and the left foot stepping back. And remember, we don't want to be on a balance beam here. So you want your right leg closer to the right chair leg and the left foot wide enough to be almost in line with the left chair leg. And then take a moment to square the hips. So there's asymmetry in the legs. We have to rotate our hips to compensate. So right hip has to roll back, left hip has to roll forward to get the hips aligning. And then squeeze your hips together like you have a big squeeze, tight ace bandage around them. Firming your legs, make them straight. And you're not grounded yet, so look forward. Take a few breaths, just kind of tapping into your straight, firm legs. Your feet are balanced, your hips are really compact. Take another big in-breath. And then exhale, try to bow down, and you're trying to align your chest with your right leg. You might be able to come onto your forearms. You might just work with a bent elbow and still be on your hands. And now you do let the head just kind of hang passively. You can sense how the weight of the feet tends to pull toward the right. So to equalize, try to just bring some weight gently to your right big toe, left small toe to compensate, to equalize. Good, I saw some hips moving into line, that was good. Keep breathing. So one day, someday, your chin is on your shin and your hands are behind your back. I like to say one day, someday, maybe never. But it's always fun to know kind of the trajectory of these poses. Go ahead and inhale back to kind of that half position where you're looking forward. Start to move back onto your hands if you came to the forearms. And then gently stepping the left foot forward. And you can take the right leg back. So remember that the left toes point directly forward. The right toes, the back foot toes are slightly turned out. And then take some time with your wrists right under your shoulders. You're looking forward. Take some time to align your hips. Compact your hips, meaning you're trying to squeeze that left hip bone in toward midline. Come to the top of an inhale. And then exhale, lengthen toward your left leg. Bending elbows or grounding forearms if that's accessible. Your legs are firm, which means if you were to grab your kneecaps, they wouldn't wiggle around. They're totally firmly framed up by all the muscles and ligaments that surround them. Check in with the weight-bearing patterns on your feet and attempt to even it out across the feet from left to right. Keep rolling your left hip back, right hip comes forward, and just a few more breaths here. After an exhale, you're gonna start to look forward and just kind of initiate the exit here. Bring your hands to the chair if your forearms were down. And then bending the left knee enough that you can step your right foot forward and come back to that resting Uttanasana. So feet are hip distance, right under the hips. The arms come down, the head hangs, the knees might soften a little bit. Kind of like a rag doll position. Great. So we're going to come back to Parsvottanasana, right side, just so that we can use it to enter revolving triangle. So your right foot comes back under the chair. The left foot steps back and slightly turns out. Go ahead and align the hips, compact the hips. And you're going to be back on those kind of pillars of your arms, meaning your hands are right under your shoulders. So from here, we're going to pour the weight into the left hand and slip the right hand to the hip. And then you have this tripod. You have 2 feet and 1 hand that's grounded. Push into all 3 points equally and just start to rotate your chest to the right. It's for revolving triangle. And notice how that right hip wants to push out. Try to roll or suck that right hip toward midline. And you might be able, once you do, you might be able to squeeze a little more juice out of that twist. You might be able to roll that left armpit chest out of the shadows. I see some of you stacking the top arm, which is great. If you have a shoulder over shoulder alignment, that's an appropriate next step. But if you don't have that shoulder above shoulder alignment, you're going to want to keep working with your hand on your hip. 2 more exhales. Good. Inhale to lengthen back to center, facing down, touching down with that right hand. And then go ahead and switch your feet. So left foot comes forward, right foot steps back. It's very important to the stability of this pose that we keep the legs hip distance, even though our feet are not under the hips. So make sure you have that spacing, that you're not on a single line on your mat. Okay, so first align your hips and compact your hips with both arms down evenly. And then once you have that, pressing down more firmly in the right hand and taking the left hand to the hip. And then pushing all 3 grounding points of contact, your hand, your 2 feet, push them down, start to revolve your chest to the left. Move that left outer hip bone toward midline. And try to really clear that right armpit chest, bring it around toward the front body. Maybe the arm goes up, maybe you keep working with your hand on your hip, and the elbow moving toward midline will help kind of propel that rotation of your torso. Squeezing out 1 more exhalation. And then inhale, use your stomach muscles. Remember, they support your back. Rotate back to facing down and step your right foot forward. We'll go back to our resting Uttanasana. Nice work. Just let the head hang. Legs as straight as they're willing to be. Balance over your feet. Make sure you're not on all your heels or all your toes. And just let your breath regulate. It'll find its way back to the smooth, easy breaths. Give yourself enough time here. Okay, We'll do a little, well, let's call it an intermission, because we're gonna come back to kind of working with the chair the way we have been. So we'll come upright and do a few things just to be upright for a little bit. So just put your chair behind you with the back of the chair facing the back of your body. And put it not directly on your back body. So you have to reach just ever so slightly back with the fingertips to find that chair back. And just that action is going to help you get the shoulders in line with the hips. Put your feet in mountain position, so either hip distance apart or all the way together. And then once you've touched the chair and you feel like your shoulders are sitting back, you can move your hands just to kind of hang freely right under the shoulders off the chair. You might adjust your skull if you sense you're kind of letting the head fall forward a little bit. Try moving from the chin to the base of the skull, just to bring the head into alignment with the spine. Drop the shoulders if there's any gripping in your shoulders. Try to soften the inner shoulder blades down your back. You might be able to close your eyes here if you can support that with balance. And just bring attention to all 10 toe pads. Then bring attention to all 4, ball mounds of your front feet, big toes, small toes, ball mounds. And then the 2 heels. And a good exercise is to imagine a sesame seed under each toe pad, each ball mound, and each heel. We're bringing really particular awareness to the bottoms of the feet, and we're able to more easily kind of disperse our weight-bearing patterns more evenly. And when the feet are weight-bearing evenly, then they soften, and then they're not as contracted, so they're bigger, and they're also a little bit more quickly able to respond to small movements. So they're more intelligent. Firming your legs like the muscles are hugging onto the bones. Imagine taking the flesh of the buttocks toward the front body. Imagine taking the flesh of the front thighs towards the backs of the thighs. So we want to feel this alignment and outer body firmness. And eventually stability. Less of that kind of swaying in the breeze. Good. So we'll open the eyes and just kind of shake the limbs loose, release all the effort. That pose is full of effort, even though it appears very kind of stagnant from the outside observer. It's a lot going on in that pose. We're going to put the chair in front of us now for tree pose. And put the back of the chair closest to you so you have it for support for your hands. And remember what I said about the one leg. When we stand on one leg, we tend to turn out with that foot. We're going to be standing down on the left leg and foot first. So make sure your left foot has that mountain, the pose you were just in, the alignment. So the toes are in front of the heel. We have spacious toe pads, spacious ball mounds, from ball mound to ball mound, wide feet. And then you're going to prop your right heel against your left ankle or shin. And remember, there's that pushing out aspect that happens here. So it's drawing the left hip bone toward midline. The hips should be on the same plane as if there's a piece of glass here. Both hip points are touching that glass evenly. And then just kind of steer your right knee not only to the side, but press it back. And you maybe feel that right buttock roll forward. If you're able to, you'll step up the leg. So that's not for everybody. Sometimes that piece isn't a wise action because it maybe distorts your pose or takes the integrity away from the pose. So you have to discern if that's a good choice to take the foot either below the knee or above the knee. And then maybe you're able to take one hand to your chest, maybe both hands. It's helpful to pick an anchor point for your gaze, which is straight across the room, something level with the horizon line of your vision. And then maybe lastly, the arms go up, but that's really the kind of the cherry on top. So don't rush that piece, and you'll know if it's a good choice or a bad choice if you try it. It might just feel like the whole pose kind of collapsed, or some of those wise actions in the legs are gone. Then we want to kind of wait for the arms to go up for another day. And then as far as you took those steps, you'll just kind of rewind them backwards and eventually step the foot down and shake out left leg. So again, refreshing kind of that hardworking standing leg. Make sure it isn't starting the second side of the pose. We don't want to start fatigued. So just kind of kicking out any fatigue or kind of stiffness. And then put your right foot into that Tadasana stance. So the toes in front of the heel, the spacious ball mounds. That means you're going to pick up all the toes and just kind of spread the toes out. Someday you might see a little bit of mat between all of your toes. That's a good sign that you're kind of working with more expansive feet. And then we'll prop the left heel against the inner right leg, moving the right hip bone in. You might think about your inner thigh as a continuation of your spine, like a post into the floor. Hip points are even. Don't let that left hip rotate back. So keep the left hip forward as you press your knee not only out to the side, but back. Work into that external hip rotation. Feel the left buttock roll forward. Maybe one hand comes to the chest, maybe both. Pick that gaze on the horizon line, which helps your spine stay neutral. Maybe the foot can step higher up the leg without the pose distorting. Maybe the arms go up. And remember how your feet felt in mountain pose. So if your standing leg foot is kind of clinging to the floor, remember to really spread your weight out evenly. See if you can soften that foot, make it more expansive, make it more intelligent. And then go ahead and reverse those steps. And once you have the left foot down, give your right leg a good shake. Okay. So you move the chair aside. We're going to take crescent pose. So if you're able to, you're going to join the big toes. The heels are slightly apart. If you need a little bit more width for your own stability, go up as wide as hip distance. Not any wider though, just hip distance is enough. So we're going to be moving the spine in that crescent moon shape here. So you raise the arms. Remember, you don't have to do a fully extended arm. If your shoulders don't allow, you can do a letter V. You can do a goalpost. So those are good options. If you're able to fully extend your arms and press your hands together, that's kind of the classical shape of the pose. So feel just kind of your symmetry here, the evenness of the feet. You're going to try to maintain that as you shift your weight in a moment. Take an in breath, really lengthening up through the fingertips. Exhale, you're going to lengthen to the left. And notice how the feet are more challenged here to remain balanced. So give a little step down into your right foot just to return some weight there. Keep your arms straight, which means they're probably touching the sides of your head if you're in the closed palm position. And then you're going to inhale yourself back upright and exhale your hands to your heart, giving your arms a little rest. Just take a few moments here. Rest the shoulders, breathing the sternum, not only into the thumbs, but up to the ceiling. Waiting for the breath to become smooth and even again. And I've been really short of breath this last week, so I might be over cueing that this week, but it's a good reminder that your breath really is kind of your guide through your practice. And then when you're ready, arms go up again. Just sensing the balanced feet, we're going to try to maintain that. Come to the top of the in-breath. Exhale, extending to the right. And of course, we're opening the left side body here, but we're also trying to maintain some spaciousness to the right side body, which is a real challenge when we move to that side. So imagine you're bringing space somehow between your right hip crest and your right armpit. You're not trying to collapse that area. You're trying to keep some spaciousness between the side ribs. Keep extending through the fingertips, through the top of the head. Every time you exhale is a chance to just take that crescent shape maybe slightly farther. And remember to step extra weight into your left foot to keep the feet balanced. That's really an anchor point for you here. Beautiful. Inhale up. And exhale again. This time you can release the arms all the way down. And you'll be back in mountain pose. And the body should kind of, you can sense it putting itself back together when we do a pose in a practice, and then we repeat it. There's this really beautiful kind of witnessing of the body intelligence. We can feel ourselves kind of becoming more aligned without so much direction. Drop the shoulders, lift through the top of the head. Compact your legs front to back. Compact your buttocks toward the front body. Make sure the skull is floating directly above the spine. Lengthen from the chin to the base of the skull. And imagine roots coming out of your feet, deep into the floor below you. And not only straight down, but like a canopy of roots underneath the floor. And when you're ready, let the eyes blink open. And we're going to come into goddess pose. So we'll take the feet wide. The toes are turned out 45 degrees, so they're looking kind of at the corners of your mat. And this is a goalpost arm position. So what I like to think about here is when your arms are in goalpost position, if you see your arms in your peripheral vision, you want to try to take the elbows slightly farther back, because essentially, if the elbows move back, the shoulder blades have to press forward. And that's really what we're trying to do here to keep the chest lifted. So move the hands until you can't see your peripheral vision. You can't see your arms or your hands. And then you're going to exhale and bring your knees over your ankles. And we know that knees tend to knock here. So you're going to kind of gently magnetize your knees toward the small toe side of the feet. Don't let your skull come forward. Keep your head over your spine. And go as deep as you can. And try to really use the tripods of your feet, meaning it's not really so much about the toes in this one. So feel the ball mounds, feel the heels. You have a little tripod in each foot, and make them even. You might even pick up your toes as kind of an added reminder. Keep pressing the knees back, take the tailbone into the body, keep your skull over your spine. And if you can contract the pelvic floor, it's a boost to the energy of the spine. It's going to kind of shuttle the energy of the spine up, 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 because there's a big potential for it to go the other direction here. So lifting your spine with that slight contraction at the pelvic floor. It should not be any more effort than it takes your eyes to blink. And then go ahead and straighten your legs. Turn your toes forward. Extend your arms out so your palms face down. 5-pointed star. You can do this by slowly blinking. You can do this with your eyes closed. But just imagine you're sending energy out in 5 directions. The fingertips out through the soles of the feet, out through the crown of the head. Just letting your breath regulate here. And release the arms down. The eyes are closed. Go ahead and open them and step the feet together. Beautiful. So we're going to do a few more poses with the seat of the chair as our support. So you can go back to working with the way you were earlier. And the first thing we're going to do is kind of a low lunge. So you're going to take the right foot forward and the left foot back. Because we're lunging, your back heel can be off the ground and your back heel can be in alignment with your toes. You don't have to have any turnout with the toes. we're gonna make this a low lunge. So what you're gonna do, and you may need to elevate the seat of the chair. So just see about it. And if you need to do that, you'll have to step up and get something like a block. But we're gonna try to put the forearms down kind of over to the left side of the seat of the chair so that your arms are kind of inside the space of the right knee and thigh. So what you're doing here is you're gently squeezing in with the inner right knee so that your knee doesn't go blasting out to the right. So you're only doing it enough to correct, not to overcorrect. So if you were able to see your right toes, your right knee is in line with them. Okay, so you can feel how the right knee likes to pull toward the toward the right. So you're just pulling it to the left enough to keep it tracking with your toes. Meanwhile, you're getting this deep right hip massage. So every time you exhale, imagine you're just kind of relaxing into that deep hip flexion. You might even imagine the ball and socket joint of the hip and the femur head just kind of plunging more deeply into the hip socket. So this is effortful. So let your head relax just a few more breaths here. And now come to your hands. And the way I like to transition here is I straighten my right leg. I put a little more weight into my left foot. And then I use a little bit of like a springing or a momentum or a ballistic action to step that left foot forward. We're going to do the very same thing on the left now. So with these, again, make sure your feet are hip distance, even though they're not under the hips. Attempting to bring your left knee into a 90-degree, or one day, someday, into that depth. And then again, we're going to rest the arms kind of to the right side of the chair seat so that the arms are within the space of the left knee. And you're tracking the knee slightly toward midline just to correct for that pulling to the left. So another way you can tell, because you can't see your foot, is if your big toe ball mound is as heavy as your small toe ball mound on that left foot, then you've probably got a really good alignment going on. Let your head hang. As you sink deeper into the left hip space, fully extend your right leg. So no saggy kneecaps, taking the right thigh front to back, extending out through the back heel. Just 3 more breaths here. And after your third exhale, you slowly inhale back to the hands, straighten the left leg, put some more weight into your right foot. You might do a few kind of just little rocks until you're able to spring forward with the right foot. Put yourself back in resting Uttanasana. Good. So you're on the forearms, head is dangling, the feet are hip distance, the toes are in front of the heels. The legs are as straight as you can make them, but without straining, without tugging on the ligaments behind the knees. We don't want that. So this is so good for the spine because our spine usually faces gravity in the other direction. So it's a really nice break from gravity for the spine. Using the skull as a prop to help the spine decompress. Tap into the full weight of your head. If you can, let it dangle. That's going to be useful. And then you're going to help yourself come back to your tabletop position. Okay. So we're going to repeat what we just did. We're going to build onto it though. Okay, so right foot comes back to the under the chair position, left foot steps back, heel is lifted, you're back in that lunging stance. You're going to stay on your right hand, but the left hand will come to the left hip You can pivot and put the sole of the left foot down and roll your chest to look to the left. So we've put ourselves into a pose. This is side angle pose. And if you have that open chest, kind of shoulder over shoulder alignment, then you'll add the left arm aligning with the ear so that essentially the left arm matches the diagonal line of your left side body. But if you're still kind of getting the shoulders to align, you'll keep your left hand on your hip and keep moving the elbow kind of toward midline to help roll the torso. Good. So remember to use your stomach muscles as you transition back to facing your chair seat. Put the hand down and pivot back off of your heel. Heel is back up and behind the toes. You're back in your lunge. We're going to do one more piece here before we transition. The pose you just did, we're going to do the revolving version. Revolving version of the pose. Okay, so from here, right hand comes to the right hip. And then you're going to gently push down and revolve your chest to face the right. Now, I find it very difficult to do the arm alongside the ear in this pose, but feel free to try it. And remember to keep the hips compacted, because otherwise we destabilize ourselves. We can't ring as much, we can't twist as deeply if the hips are not stabilized. Stability lends itself to mobility, so they work in tandem. Last exhale. Inhale, lengthening your spine, come back to facing the chair, and then finding your way to bringing the feet together. And then back to resting Uttanasana. Okay, so prepare for second side. The left foot is forward, the right foot is stepping back. And the same two poses we're going to try over here. So first, just come into your lunging position. And then we're going to pivot onto the sole of the right foot. We're going to bring more weight into the left hand. We'll take the right hand to the right hip. And then with those 3 points of contact and with the nice bent left knee above left ankle, you're looking to the right. And if you are going to include the arm, start with a vertical arm first, then revolve the arm so your palm faces off toward the head, and then aligning the arm with the ear so that the arm really matches the side body. That's why this pose is called side angle pose, because we essentially create this beautiful angle with the entire side body. And gently begin to bring yourself back to facing the chair and pivot off of your right heel. Put the right heel back directly behind the toes. You're back to being even on both hands for a moment. Compact the hips to midline. Remember the ace bandage, squeezing them together. Right hand stays down, left hand comes to the hip. On an exhale, initiate that revolving action with your torso, moving to the left. Connect the dots of the tailbone all the way out through the crown of the head. So in other words, don't forget the head is kind of the exit point for the line of energy of the spine. So put the head in alignment with the tailbone. Squeezing that left hip bone to midline. Maybe the arm comes in, maybe it doesn't. It's a big kind of fat grand finale. If you can get it there, it's a lot. And after an exhale, you gently turn back to facing the chair. And then stepping your feet together. And one last time, resting Uttanasana. We're going to come up slowly. Use your abdomen to support the spine coming back upright. And we're going to take one more standing pose just to kind of wind down, kind of settle the nervous system. So it's the wide standing forward bend with the chair seat for support for your arms or fists. So what you want to do is take your feet wider than hip distance. One day the width is enough that you create an equilateral triangle between your legs and the floor. Your toes should be directly in front of your heels. And then you're going to come forward and you'll have to see about what you need for head support. You might choose to support the top of the head. Some of you might be able to go to a block on the floor rather than the chair. Some of you, most of us will use the chair, and you're either going to rest your forehead or the crown of the head, most likely the forehead. And if you're resting on the chair seat, you can either use your forearms or you could put your two fists on top of each other and make a little pedestal for your forehead. Try to balance the weight over the feet. So if you were up against a wall, your butt wouldn't be able to pull back, which for a lot of us it does. And try to imagine you're up against a wall here with the legs and the buttocks and the heels. And there's a lot of pressure on the outer ankles to push out. So just kind of reverse that by imagining the outer ankle bones moving in toward midline. We're going to gently leave the pose. So try to do so on an inhale, and heels and toes, heels and toes, heels and toes until your feet are back underneath your hips. And we will be sitting for the rest of our time. All right. So I thought we'd do a couple core strengtheners. So we do a little bit of Navasana, which is the boat pose. One thing to think about in boat pose, which is kind of a letter V shaped pose, we want the sides of the V to match. So in other words, you don't see letter V tilted one way or the other. So when we take the legs up, and we're going to do this in small kind of incremental steps, but when we take the legs up, we want the legs, the angle of the legs to match the angle of the torso. So something to consider when you're in the pose is, you know, you can't see yourself, but just try to sense that your torso is angled equally to your thigh. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. So come to the edge of the chair seat. And you're just going to use the support of your hands underneath your left thigh. And drop the weight of the leg into the left thigh. So here you've put the thigh at an angle, probably because your knee is higher than your hip. So when we take the pose, we want to also match that angle by tilting the torso back equally. Okay, so try to create that letter V with your torso and your left thigh. Shoulders roll back. So we are a letter V, not a letter U, which is rounding the back body. We don't want to do that. And then as best you can, extend your left leg. And remember how we hold the weight of the leg. It's not with our backs, it's with our stomachs. So squeezing, corseting, a particle board image of your abdominals. Squeeze it all to midline and to back body. 3 breaths. As you start to develop this pose, you do it both legs without hand support. So that's just kind of where, you know, the finish line would be. But it's really good to develop these poses with wise actions. Otherwise, we do end up injuring the back. Bring the foot down. Other side. Scooping kind of under the left thigh. As you raise the thigh and see it at an angle, try to put your torso at the same angle. And extending slowly the right leg. And while you're here, you might already play with just less help from the hands. So you might back off with the amount that your hands are holding, using the stomach muscles instead. I find it's helpful to bring your gaze up the wall because your eyes should match. The horizon line is changed because your torso is angled back. So it's just geometry. Just kind of bringing the gaze up helps keep the spine up. And then go ahead and release. Okay, so we're going to try both legs and then we'll just kind of be done with all the effortful stuff. So you can use your chair for support. Hold the arms or hold the seat, whatever helps you. And just tilt back until you're able to pick up your toes. And this might not be in the cards today, so you'll just be on the tippy toes and engaging the stomach muscles and keeping the chest open. If you are picking up your toes, see about extending the legs. You probably won't go to full extension, just see about it. And try to be a letter V rather than a letter U. Lift, 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 squeeze your, gently blink the pelvic floor to shuttle that energy up the spine. Beautiful job. And then go ahead and touch down. We're going to release the abs. So once the feet are down, extend your legs forward. Sit back on the chair. Ideally, the chair back, the upper part, is hitting you across the shoulder blade area, which helps keep your chest nice and spread. Take your hands behind your head, interlock the hands, and let your head press heavily against your palms. Take the elbow tips back, which, as we know, helps the shoulder blades move into the chest. And then just take a few exaggerated in-breaths to lengthen out the stomach muscles again. So we know the image of a fishing pole, that the line is pulled too tight, the pole gets rounded. So if we overdevelop the abs and we don't compensate with enough abdominal stretches, then we end up distorting our spine. So we want to just always take care to keep the length, but recover, keep the strength is what I meant to say, but recover the length. Go ahead and help yourself sit up. You're going to get nice and comfortable in your chair now. We're just going to sit quietly with whatever. Actually, before we do so, let's just do a gentle twist to each side a couple times. Don't hold it very long. Just do a few from side to side. You might move with each breath. You might stay on each side for a couple of breaths, but just kind of self-guiding a couple twists here. Nothing extreme, just a little bit of another way to down-regulate the nervous system with twisting. And then when you've had enough twisting, sit back in the chair. Keep the feet right under the knees. Hands on your lap and hands close to your pelvis so that your shoulders sit back. Your skull is over your spine. Your chin is level with the floor. You're not tilting the chin. You're going to close your eyes. And just try to be with the full experience here, the full experience of sensation, of thoughts, of feelings, of perceived, outside of yourself, stimuli that the senses detect. Just kind of really opening yourself up to whatever is here and now, this very moment. Only place that life exists right now. And I love the feeling after a practice, how porous I feel as a sensory being. I feel very perceptive. I feel like my awareness is heightened. And the good news is we keep that feeling for hours after a practice. Watching the breath without trying to control the breath. Make sure the face softens, especially around the forehead, eyes, and mouth. Take a nice deep breath in. Let it fully empty. Bring your hands together in front of your heart once again. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Beautiful job, everyone. And Sue and Jill, I'm glad you were able to stay through. Good. And hope to see everybody again next week. Take care.